So starting another week at 657 hours, welcome back. So the lower cowl fiasco continues. Let's have a look at the one that we got given. Okay, here's the 916 engine sitting in here, and I've got the muffler in, but it wouldn't sit here because obviously that's actually going to exhaust into that bit. So this is not where it would sit, it'll actually sit lower, but that's the optimum for cutting, if you know what I mean. And so here's the cowl we got with this small piece here. At least this much is going to need to come off in order to fit around the muffler. So all this stuff here is superfluous. This is the little fairing here that would normally fit there. Well, that clearly isn't going to fit. So it seems pretty obvious that what we got given was a 915 cowl, despite that the fact that the kit is a 916 aircraft kit, and it's noted in all the documentation we've got. So again, sling strikes still the same. I haven't done anything with that. I'd actually left it on for a couple of hours actually, to be honest, so it's got a couple more hours on there than it should have, but it probably all works out much the same in the end. So a few updates now. We've got our wheels and brakes, so they've all turned up, so I'm just in the middle of putting the tyres on. The axles are on, and then so I've got to lift this up somehow and get the wheels and brakes on. It's kind of a shame that it doesn't have a flat spot just under here that you can put a jack under there and lift it up, and if I had the time I'd probably do something like that to put it on and just glue it on. But anyhow, we'll figure out some method. And really the big news is the cowling. So this is how I'd cut the cowling out, just with the 916 in there, and you can see how there's quite a bit of excess removed here because it used to be a 915 cowl. So it's all completely wrong. Glen's actually managed to get a new cowl, which is great, so this is going to have to come off. We'll bin this. I had actually made a NACA inlet that I was going to put in here, but I don't need to do that anymore because the fairing for the exhaust would have had to have been quite different as well, and I'd have had to do quite a bit of repair to filling in holes and things. And so that's a mess really, so I'll just pull that off, and all the changes I've made to the cowl to make it fit, I'll just forget it, and we'll see how we go with the new one. On the top side, we were going to put a backup alternator in here, and consequently it's got the blister. The new 916 is a completely new mould apparently, because we're told that on the 916 even some of the alternators don't fit with this cowling, so they've completely remoulded it for the 916, so it'll be interesting to see what that is when it turns up. So at the moment what I'm going to do is pull all this stuff off, drill the rivets out. I have actually used glue as well, so I'll have to heat it up and break the glue off, pull all the cam locks out. There's only a couple that were actually finally installed, and then that can sit aside, and when they turn up and I get back from holiday, I'll start fitting that. So my NACA inlet that I'd made is now surplus to requirements, but anyhow, doesn't matter. I would prefer to use the proper thing at any rate. And apparently Glen also now has the cuff that's supposed to go around the muffler, so we should be able to settle this up like it's supposed to be. So I'm not really sure what to do with the timer. If I start the timer going and start taking all that cowl apart in order to fit the new cowl, it's still time, I'm working on it, but it's not indicative of what someone would have done had they just got the correct cowl in the first place and done it. So not really sure what I should do there. Should I continue the timer while I'm pulling things apart in order to put something back on, or should I just leave it in one place and wait until I catch up to the same place? Tell me what you think in the comments. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do. Here's a glimpse of a new cowl with a couple of the obvious new features: the inlet for the heater and the fairing for the exhaust. I went on holiday at this point with my family who was visiting Cape Town, and Vicky had organised this really cool day out for us. We got picked up by Malika and her 64 Chevy for real car hire, and she drove us out to Chapman's Peak. What a fantastic day out. We were certainly the centre of attention from all the tourists. Okay, we're back into it. Still says 6:57. I've probably done a little bit more. I just wasn't sure what to do with the timer, whether to freeze it or not. But now I've spoken to a few people and they seem to think I should keep it running, so I'll do that. But in the meantime, we've got the Beringer axles, and I had them neatly installed on the aeroplane, but there's a problem with them, and that is Beringer, when they manufacture it, didn't do the job right. And you can't get the 5/16 24 threaded bolt, i.e. an AN5, in from the correct side because the thread doesn't go all the way through. Threads in nicely from the back, which is no good to anybody, but it won't go at all in this side. So we've just got to get a tap and just chase that through just so that works. So I'm going to have to pull them all off, do that, and then pop it all back on. Just as I filmed that, a box turned up with a bunch of goodies that we need to keep moving. Yet another big box to correct all the cock-ups. And we've just had a big arrival of some parts after many complaints. And we can see a big box out the back there with things that we need. So we've got old cowling sitting over there. And down here, I've got the new top cowling and the new bottom cowling. So we can see on the bottom cowling now, we've got this hole here for the heater, and the exhaust, what would we call that, fairing I guess, is quite different. I don't know if there's any more that's required, I don't think so. That will now fit, or at least should fit, around the 916. On this side, see, this has got a sort of psychedelic sort of shape to it now on that NACA duct. And the intercooler is no longer here. That's because it's a separate piece. If you look over here, it's this duct here, so this needs gluing on, so that's a job for us as well. They obviously don't do that in the factory anymore. And also there's these doors, and we can see that they are significantly bigger than the old doors. And the downside to that is the piece of hinge that we've got is now too short, so we're going to have to get some more hinge. Great. We've also got these pieces here, which is the heater duct, which needs fitting on here somehow. I'm going to look to see how that fits. I think it's probably over there somewhere. Haven't got the bolts for it. Don't know what happened with that, but anyhow, at least we've got it. And this is the top cowl, and it's quite different in here. Evidently there's a bit more room in underneath, so you can fit in an external alternator, and it also now doesn't have the bubble. But, so Sling strikes again. Here it is, sitting about as good as you can get it to fit. Obviously this piece here is going to need me to fill this in because it's lousy the way that sits. But joy of joys, it's too short. Comes from the factory, too short. So they've obviously just cut that off with some random amount. I don't know. What's that? Almost half an inch in there. So that's dreadful. So I'm going to have to add quite a bit of fiberglass in the back to make that fit. So just when I thought I had more work than I needed, I've got even more. Terrific. Good.
Got some wheels now?
Putting some wheels on. Okay, down, thanks. Is this a bit of a legal duel going on here, is it?
We thought we'd take it for a little bit.
Yeah. I didn't know you had your instructor rating. Okay, back into it again now. My family's all gone home, so I've got a month, and I've got to get this thing ready for paint. So this is what I've done. Bought one of these, the tap that's required to fix up the poor manufacturing of the Beringer axles, and now I can get these screws into there. So that's good, and as a result, I now have the wheels on. I've just got to finish plumbing up the brakes. So I just put it's a banjo fitting goes on there, so I'll just do all that. So that'll be another thing to do today. And I haven't got a decent spanner or socket for there, so that'll happen in future, and then I'll put the lock wire on. But that's that, and of course shortly that's going to mean I'm going to have to get the spats on, which I'm not looking forward to do. But first of all, I've got that thing to fit on again and see how that goes. Now we know that this didn't fit because the part that came from Sling was short by a significant amount. They're really, really thin, and lightweight, way too thin actually along this edge here because they sit in from the skin of the aeroplane. There's a spacer that goes in between the skin and the lip that it mounts onto, and it probably isn't actually needed in actual fact if you're going to keep it this thin, but I'd rather have it a little bit more durable than that, so I'm going to add some more in behind it. But so I've made a bit of a mould here just using these sticks and some tape to just extend this lip out. Then what I've done is I've used the sander to scarf the top cowling, so all of this will fit and scarf in, and then I've put a little piece of peel ply to the top that just goes level with the edge here, and then I've only got 4 layers on at present and some more peel ply, so I'll sort that out in a minute, and then it'll give me something to cut to, and then I can just sand all this even so it'll all blend in, and then I can add the extra layers that I want to put in here to thicken it up. So that should do that. It'll need a little bit of filler on the top just to sand into shape to make it look good, because Sling have cut it way too small, so it's basically, I think it was probably a garbage one that they sent. They've told us that they only make 1 cowl every 2 weeks and they're already about 12 behind, so I guess, well, I say we were lucky, but I mean they owed us it, but anyhow that's the way they roll, unfortunately. So that's what we've got, and we don't have the time to wait for them to put right what they should have put right, so we're just putting up with the garbage. But anyway, I'll fix it up and we'll get on with it. Looking at the 916 cowl now, we can see it's considerably different. So now we've got this inlet here for the heater, and down here with the bigger exhaust pipe we've got this fairing that's all built in now, and it seems to be quite a bit sturdier as a result of all that, and this curve sort of is a lot stronger. You will notice though that it's a lot higher up here. It doesn't have this huge big dip and then along here like the other one does, so this comes way up higher, so it's quite a bit deeper to get into here. And the front, they still haven't sorted out this angle in here, but I think I can sort that out. Around here, because it doesn't have the NACA inlet glued in, that's going to be another thing I have to sort out. And then over here, of course, it goes a lot higher. I haven't got it quite sitting right, and I've got to trim it, but you can kind of see how that goes. But looking from the front and lining it up, it should be a lot easier to get that central line in here. So I think the bottom cowl first, the way to go this time, and just keeping it lined up on that, on the gear leg, down to the middle of the cowl, and that's kind of where I'm going to start. I've just got to make it fit around my jig a little bit better. It's a little bit small in here, so I just need to sort of widen that out a little bit and make that fit. So that's where I'm headed, and I'm just using this bungee thing here just to help hold the nose up, because it's only me that's here. It'll be a lot easier with 2, but anyway, that's how it is. So about 2 minutes further into this, I've just put this NACA duct in here, and I can see that it's going to affect the shape of the cowl quite a bit. They've got the cutout there for the pressure valve, and it's all pretty tight in here. So I think probably my first step is going to be, once I've got that piece there sorted out so it fits onto my jig, I think the next step is going to be gluing this NACA duct in, because obviously as that changes shape, it's going to change the depth here as to how it sits. So that, as I say, is probably going to be my first thing that I glue in. This is interesting in itself. So if we look at it from this perspective, the shape of the cutout and the shape of the inlet, that's sort of about as closely matched as I can get it. And if we look at the top, it sort of curves around here, and that sort of fits reasonably well there. So that's kind of the best fit that I can make that fit. But look at that. That's almost 3/4 of an inch gap there, and it's really hard. I can't really push that back, so that doesn't fit. So I don't know what to do there either. It's a disaster. I've moved this around, had it in several places, and I can't improve on that. and I think that that's pretty much where that is, and it lines up pretty much with a sort of a general flow through to the side of that, so when that would be glued up on it, it would kind of fit right. So that's kind of seems where that needs to be, but that is going to need, well, gee, I don't know, a hell of a lot of flocks or something in there to bog that up. Yeah, it's, like I say, it's a bloody mess. And in fact, as I look at the old cowl, the old style, it's very similar, and there's actually quite a few places where there's a big bog full of flocks. So I don't feel quite so bad about it now, it's just lousy. So I'm just going to have to do what I can do. So attempting to fit the cowl, it was a complete disaster, and I realised what the problem was, is that, which normally sits like that for a 915, sits like that for a 916. Unfortunately though, that means those holes, the pattern is inverted, so this bracket no longer fits. So I need a different bracket, so that's going to slow me down a little. Okay, 64 hours, that's my first day done. I'm a bit beat actually. Hasn't been super successful, but anyhow, I'll show you where we're at. I'm keen to get the video out. So this is the end of day one after my holiday. I had the first bit of fiberglassing in here, that's dried up, and I've trimmed it pretty close, and I'm adding a little bit more in here now for strength down through the middle bit, and also to give it some depth because it's a little bit shallow, so that should sort that out. I've started to fit the spat, so I've done all I've done on this one is drilled an 8mm hole in the end, and I don't have a hole saw big enough for the other one, but I'll sort something out with that. The inside piece I've set up with the holes, and I put the nutserts in there, so that's just drying up with a bit of epoxy, and I'll just grind that out tomorrow morning to make it fit a little bit better. I've also connected up the brake lines on both sides of the Beringer wheels. Still needs a lock wire in here to hold the disc on, and I've also got to torque up the nut that holds it on and put the pin through. Haven't got the equipment for that. I've started putting on this heat muff here. It's built like a Sherman tank, but it doesn't fit particularly well, so I've got to make that fit a little bit better. I need a little bit longer bolts for the back just to start it off, and then I can swap them back over to the correct ones. Shouldn't be too hard. I'll do that tomorrow morning. Bottom cowl's been a nightmare, and initially that was because I had the bracket mounted on here for the 915, which is how we got the quick build kit, even though it said 916. So we've asked for a replacement bracket because otherwise it would be drilled upside down. So that is really the thing I need in order to complete the cowling. That thing there is just straight out awful, but I'm going to wait until I get the top cowl fitting onto the bottom cowl, because this part here is quite flexible and I want to make sure it fits the top cowl properly and not sort of influenced by that thing, more by the top cowl, and I'm going to have to bog it so much anyway that I might as well just bog the rest of it to hold it in the correct shape. Now of course when I say bog, I'm talking about flocks because it needs to be strong. Anyway, we'll wait until that's in the appropriate form. And that's it. So again, that's the end of my day after being on holiday. Feels a bit strange to get back into it, and I'm a little bit shot actually, but I'll see you on the next one. Bye.